Hey everybody, this is Erick here with the GameFob Network at Wondercon 2014. I'm standing here with Claudio Sanchez and Chondra Echert. Claudio, a lot of people know from Coheed and Cambria, but some people may not know, hopefully you do, that he and his lovely wife here also write comic books, and a lot of them are amazing. And their latest comic book right now is their first foray into superheroes and villain, and I read the first issue, it's amazing, but let's jump into it. Translucid. So was Translucid this idea of a superhero and the dynamic between a superhero and a villain something that you've always wanted to do? Was it a recent idea? How did this idea come about?
I don't know. I think, well, you know, we've done a few titles that are not superhero related. I mean, certainly I think the closest we've gotten to that is a science fiction called the Amory Wars, but we just thought maybe this is the right time to do it. And at the time, when the initial idea sort of came about, I had written a song for the Arkham City soundtrack, sort of about the relationship between Batman and the Joker, and so I guess it just kind of spiraled from that. You know, I went to a graveyard to do a band photo shoot, and I found this grave where the name was like Cornelius Slingerland, and the two things kind of merged there, and then we started working on the story.
Definitely. Yeah, Claudio's been a big fan of like The Killing Joke, and we're obviously both fans of The Watchmen. So stories that kind of step outside what you usually get with superheroes and explore kind of darker dynamics there. So yeah.
So one of the very interesting things that I find about Translucid so far is that and even in the book it says this is, like, you may think you know this story, but it's just not another parable of good and evil, right? What do you think? I mean, obviously you guys know there have been plenty of stories written about good and evil and how people come to make the choices that they do make. What's the different dynamic that you're really trying to bring with Translucid? And I know it has to do with the main characters, with the Navigator and the horse, right?
You know, it's funny because, and I think with most well-written characters, there's not a cut and dry, you know, you're not all good, you're not all evil. And with these two characters in particular, the horse is not an evil villain. He doesn't have these terrible intentions in mind for the city. And the Navigator, who's the hero, isn't necessarily all good. The things that have sort of pushed him into being a hero are really dark things. And it was almost as if he became a hero because he had no other choice. So I think the characters have a little bit more depth, and it's not so much surface, you know, as you'd expect.
Yeah, and I think we also really wanted to explore, you know, the emotion between those two characters. I mean, at the end of the day, like, when you think of like a character like the Batman, there's something wrong with him mentally, and you know, and what really differentiates him between all of the others that he inspired. So they have this common ground that they share. You would think that they would probably be friends. You know, so I think that's the friendship between these two characters, the unspoken friendship, that just, you know, through time, through all of these things that they go through, they start to getting this understanding about each other, and so I think that's like part of what we're trying to explore.
That's great. And I noticed reading the first issue, the Navigator is set up as they're not like superheroes in the sense that, you know, they're like Green Lantern or Spider-Man or, you know, whoever Superman, they actually have powers or come from a different planet. It just seemed, I mean, from the first page, it's a kid drawing some ideas, and then you see the Navigator, and he has this cool, like, holographic, like, kind of like utility belt, and like, where did that idea come from? Like, how did that come about?
I think it was probably, well, it was a little bit of a couple of things, like you know, the holographic technology and how that's sort of being explored right now. And also almost like a tip of the hat to 1960s Batman, where it's like, you know, every sort of situation he found himself in, there was always a resolve in the belt, you know, like bat repellent shark spray, things like that. So we thought, well, why not create a technology with holograms where maybe there's like sort of some sort of chemical reaction between his touch and the hologram where he can sort of make it tangible and usable.
Totally.
So that was sort of the idea for.
Yeah, it's like, you know, with the Navigator, he doesn't have necessarily the same access to cash, you know, that a Bruce Wayne or a Tony Stark would have. So he's really had to develop his intelligence over the years, and that's what we see a lot, are very intelligent heroes, but with no real powers, per se.
And that's almost like a bit of a nod to Spider-Man, you know, Peter Parker.
Totally.
I mean, in the second issue, you'll sort of see that little nod. in the opening sequences. So.
That's awesome. And this is a question for you, and also have a follow up for you as well to kind of have you both answer this question. Like knowing that for better part of more than a decade now, you've been doing Coheed and Cambria, writing songs, and we've had the Amory Wars and the entire series, and you've had to write, like your story into the song is what you've been into the songs is what you've been doing. What is the difference between like divorcing that idea of writing a story with songs that you're thinking about and just writing these standalone like Key of Z or Kill Audio that you've been doing lately? And you, I've read that don't have as extensive a background as him. How has that been coming into the fray of getting into this comics world and then starting to write comics and stuff? So those are the questions here.
Okay. Yeah. Well, for me, I mean, I don't have that song counterpart to sort of pivot off of. That's usually what happens is, when I write these songs, they very much are rooted in reality and things that I've endured as an individual, but then I sort of take them and mold them into a piece of fiction, which then becomes the Amory Wars. So that's the only difference. I don't have that now with stories like Translucid and Key of Z. So I think that's sort of where Chondra comes into play, is that she gets to kind of fill that void for me. This is just me speaking, whatever you'd like to answer in that, but you know what I mean? It's like I get to kind of bounce that off of her as opposed to Amory Wars, where I'm bouncing concepts off of music.
Yeah, I think the expectation is a little different because, even Kill Audio, the first series that we did together, kind of had a musical component, not only in the story alone, but, there was an EP released with that, with 2 songs that were kind of featured in the comic. So I think the option is always there if you wanted to do a translucid tune.
Yeah, but that's the thing is with Kill Audio, it was such an afterthought. We came upon, I think it was issue 3, and we were like, okay, well, let's sort of involve this piece of vinyl record that has this song on it that hypnotizes this one character in particular. And it's like, okay, well, why don't we actually create a song for that and make that available with the subscription? And so we did, but that was sort of an afterthought, whereas Coheed, the music sort of happens first and becomes the foundation of the concept. Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so, in your humble opinions, being the writers of the comic book, why should people go and check out Translucid? This is your why do you love this character enough or these characters enough to write about them? Like, make that idea come from your brain and manifest itself onto paper.
Well, yeah, for me personally, I mean, I like a lot of the stories that I like are ones that involve identity, and like I think we all have issues with our own identity, and whether we're not good at something or we could have been better at this or that or the other thing, or where do we sit in the way that we're sort of we measure each other. This is that. It's sort of this identity crisis between these 2 characters who very much love each other, and at the end of the day. So I think that's what kind of makes it sort of stand apart, is that we're really magnifying that inner sort of conflict between them, but then that sort of sums up with the 2 of them. When they come together, it all sort of makes sense, and I think I sort of answered that question.
Yeah, I think it's the relationship. I think the relationships you'll find in this book are the same ones that you would find in a friendship, in a marriage, and with your family. It's at the core, the emotions are all the same. It's just a lot more fun to look at.
That's awesome. And lastly, as you guys are doing this whole Translucid thing, I'm gonna have to ask this because people would probably yell at me on the internet if I don't. But what are the updates with Coheed as far as I know In Keeping Secrets and Second Stage those comics we're getting through. Good Apollo, Volume 1.
Yes, we are actually scripting it at the moment. We've been working on it for a couple of years now, just sort of plotting out the outline. I mean, so now it's like a team has sort of gotten together and we've started to script it, and we're actually in issue 1 right now. So hopefully that'll sort of come back and be what we all kind of hope it to be, because there are a lot of expectations for Amory Wars, and and there's a lot of when I started writing Amory Wars however many years ago, I mean, I didn't really know the first thing of what I was doing. I just came in dry, and there's a lot of things that we sort of want to tie up from those pre-existing stories, with these concluding ones. So it's just taking a lot more time, and it's like kid gloves, I guess.
Yeah, it's not forgotten or neglected. It's constantly be worked on. But it's like you don't want to screw it up a second time. You want everything to really be clear and as strong a story as possible. So making sure that it's dealt with tenderly.
And the team that we've got on it right now, with myself, Chondra, and a few others, it's like everybody involved is a Coheed fan and wants to see the best for the Amory Wars, as opposed to like sort of getting people involved and it just being sort of a paycheck. It's very much a passion between the council of the Amory.
That sounds awesome. So, Translucid, the Amory Wars, was a Key of Z, Kill Audio, all you can find through Boom Studios, coheedandcambria.com. Where else can you find the comics if they want to purchase them?
Evil Inc.
Everything Evil, everythingevilinc.com is one, and Boom Studios the other.
Yeah.
I
think that's,
yeah,
Comixology, all of our titles are available digitally there. But yeah, the standard spots.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm excited for Translucid. I read the first issue of Translucid, and can't wait for the next one. It's
so
like,
excited to see
I don't want to have to wait.
The end is, we're actually scripting issue 6 right now, and I think it's a really great, beautiful ending.
I want to congratulate you two on your greatest creation so far.
Thank you very much.
All right, so Claudio Sanchez, Chondra Echert, Boom Studios, Evil Inc., get the comics, do everything. This is Eric with GameFob Network at Wondercon 2014. Thank you all.